So I know we're pushed for time, so we'll launch right into it. West to east, we know Asia's a huge, attractive market, and China is a huge part of that. And maybe we'll go down the panel, starting with you, Nathan. What does the company do, and how long have you been operating in Asia, and kind of why did you get into this market?
Sure. So SoftLayer is a cloud infrastructure as a service provider. We have all the building blocks that any organization that's trying to put something in the cloud, that's building something in the cloud, what they need to do that well. And we actually were acquired by IBM about 2 years ago. But even prior to that, we were out here. We opened our first data center in the region in Singapore in 2011. And last year we expanded into Hong Kong and Japan. And we also have some network points of presence in other places. And we opened recently in Australia a couple of data centers as well. So we've been here for a few years, as well as had a customer base in the area for since 2006. So opening our locations here was really kind of bringing it home for a lot of the customers we already had.
So my name's Sam Halse. I'm the CEO of Adyen. We help large global companies like Uber, Facebook, and Spotify process payments all over the world from any sales channel. So mobile, online, and physical point of sale. So we have a full omni-channel platform and control the full value chain from being an acquiring bank to offering 250 payment methods all over the world and a risk system. We've been processing payments in Asia since 2011. Opened our first office in Singapore in 2013. A lot of our large US clients have their headquarters in Singapore, so we followed them here. We also have an office in Shanghai, opening office in Australia, and we'll look to do opening office in Hong Kong at some stage next year, but work across the region. So a lot of Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Thailand, and specialize in the alternative payment methods in those regions as well.
My name is Allan Grant from a company called Hired.com. We're an online marketplace that helps people find jobs that they love. We expand regionally, one city, one geo at a time, and we're definitely the newcomer on the scene. Actually, our Asia Pacific market manager has just hit Hong Kong this morning, and we're just going to be expanding out into the region in the coming quarters. So we're actually looking to build our team here. Jimmy at Hired.com if you guys are interested in connecting.
And then so let's talk about kind of China as the largest market within Asia. How different is the Chinese market compared to the broader Asian market, and how do you guys approach China, mainland China, as well as Hong Kong? Maybe we'll start with Nathan.
Yeah, well, it's enormously different, right? I mean, there's, of course, all the cultural differences. We find in every market that we're operating in that local market is at a different place in the maturity or the life cycle of our industry, right? So whereas we are based out of North America, and in North America we can very easily enter into the conversation with customers at a different, kind of at the try-buy, place. In Hong Kong, and then especially even growing into mainland China, we have to enter the conversation a little bit more. And what's the value of cloud? What will this do for you that's different? Why is it better? Or how's it not a compromise for you? So we really have to tailor the messaging as well as the entire support and relationship that we provide to that difference.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think anywhere you go, and we always take the strategy, you need to localize. So local people, local support. I think especially within China, it's really important to have those strong local relationships. So for us, our partners being people like Alipay and UnionPay in that region, to really get to know them and work with them is super important. I think one thing as well is that a lot of Chinese companies really look globally quite early on. So we work with a lot of Chinese companies who maybe manufacture or build products in China, but also sell into Europe and the US, which I think is, fascinating that they look so early on in the process at those overseas markets as well.
Just to add a couple of things to there, government relations is a factor that it's a much bigger factor in this region and other parts of the world. The cost of acquisition for customers is potentially, the dynamics are a little bit different. And then the value per customer also is a little bit different. So some of the unit economics can be a little bit different. And then also the need for speed. So we've seen companies like DJI innovating just with rapid intensity. So that's something else that we're seeing definitely unique in this region.
And how do you go about, Sam, you were saying that getting local partners is very important, getting local kind of talent on the ground. But as an outsider, how do you go about finding partners and also finding the right people to run your kind of local operations?
Yeah, really good question. I think in Asia especially, it's important to have people with a lot of experience within the market and the relationship. So we recently brought a guy on board called Warren Hayashi who ran PayPal in the region for over 6 years. So the networks and kind of the experience with the regulations, the way that UnionPay, Alipay, those type of organizations like to operate is really, really important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. The only way to do it is to be in that market. I mean, you have to be native as much as you can, and you have to find a few great key people at the very beginning, and then as they grow, their networks become the company's networks, and that's the only way to do it. You can't be a tourist. You can't or a traveling salesman.
Yeah, for us as a marketplace company, very much the same thing where we actually have to develop the two sides of the market. So for us, it's candidates and companies that are looking to hire them. And so in each of the regions we go into, we put a team on the ground. In our case, Jimmy was previously part of LinkedIn, so also kind of very, very relevant relationship. One thing also with this that I'm reminded of, when Facebook expanded out into Japan originally, they've needed to make some product modifications, and they didn't know what those modifications would be. And later they found out that actually one of the key modifications was adding blood type as something to your profile. It's something that you would never have known unless you had that local team and local product modification. So I sort of say that we don't know what we don't know. We know there are modifications that we're going to need to make. We don't know what they are yet, but I'm sure we'll figure them out.
Yeah.
And when you're going into these markets, kind of, how much can you take a general approach? Looking at Asia, lots of kind of smaller markets. Can you take a general approach to them, or do you have to kind of tailor the way you go into each country, each territory? Do you have to tailor it to that individual market and work on them one by one? How do you expand?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, I think that a large trap that a lot of companies of any size, whether it's an early stage company, a startup company, or even larger companies that don't have a lot of international experience, they fall into the trap of thinking that the region is monolithic, which it's not. It's every country is in a completely different market, completely different set of challenges and profile, and if you have to be really strategic how you do it. We purposefully started off in Singapore to kind of get our feet wet, right? We didn't have to do a lot of localization. We didn't have to do a lot of things that different from how we had been doing it already. But then that helped us start to build our presence. And when I say presence, I don't just mean our visibility, but us building relationships within the marketplace and then growing those networks, like I said. So that then it did make sense as we grew into additional markets. We'd have people there that could advise. The Facebook example is perfect. You have to have that, and you have to come into each market as a completely new field and start from zero.
Right.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, and what we do in payments, you have to. I mean, no two markets are the same. So in Indonesia, you have Doku Wallet, you have convenience store payments, you have cash payments. In China, you have Alipay. Singapore and Hong Kong are a bit easier with high credit card penetration, but even regulations different in Asia where you need to have an acquiring license in each individual country, whereas in Europe we can have one license which is pan-European. So, I mean, you have to be super, super granular in the way you approach, the APAC market.
Yep. And I know you're all, your headquarters are either in Singapore or Hong Kong in terms of Asia. How important are these kind of, let's call them like bridge territories that are kind of quasi-Asian, quasi-Western? How are they kind of an ideal first market if you're looking to expand into Asia, that you can kind of come somewhere that is different but maybe not quite too different?
For us, we've based our office here in Hong Kong, obviously just getting started, and the first region we're actually going to launch is going to be in Australia. And so that sort of signals the importance of this as a potential headquarters, even if the first region that we're going to launch here is going to actually be an English-speaking region, slightly, 9 hours away.
And so why is Hong Kong? What sets Hong Kong apart to make it important enough that you want to base here rather than, say, Sydney or even Singapore?
Right. So we see it sort of as a great intermediary step between kind of mainland China, which is fairly different, and Australia, which is definitely more comparable to the U.S. market. So this gets us to dip our feet in and start to get exposed to some of those differences.
I think it depends on where your company is and its lifespan, and even what your offering is as well. Because, Singapore made good sense for us. At that point in our growth, we had a very low touch business model. We didn't have a very engaged. I wouldn't say engaged, but our sales team was having a hard time just keeping up with the inbound traffic. So, at that point, Singapore made sense to us, but as we grew and we had a sales team that was able to really engage, we have a startup program that that was at a point of maturity where it made sense for us to move it into Hong Kong, and that's part of the reason why now we have a larger presence here. It just really depends on who you are, where you're at, and what your offering is, and if it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that as well. And I think there's other interesting factors. I mean, you learn new things when you come to markets. I learned this week that it's super hard for expat people to get their kids into international schools in Hong Kong, whereas in Singapore it's a lot easier. So when you're bringing key people or making key hires, then there's other factors which you need to think about as well for your employee base.
Mm-hmm. And how do you once you've maybe established a foothold within Asia, how do you kind of look towards progressing into some of the other markets? If you start in Singapore, where do you target next? Is there something that influences that decision, or is it just maybe kind of you see where the customer demand is? Are there markets that are easier to enter in Asia than others? Are there markets that are significantly harder? I know Allan mentioned the regulatory issues in China, which can create barriers, but
I think for us, I mean, we've always taken a strategy worldwide where we follow our big clients and see what they want to do. And I think we're really good at simplifying complexity. So really good in the complex markets. So you talk about all the alternative payment methods in Indonesia and Malaysia and Thailand and places like that. I think for us, like I mentioned earlier, places like Singapore and Hong Kong, where there's super high credit card penetration, is kind of the bread and butter of what we do. But the Southeast Asian markets for us are super interesting.
In our case, we're really driven a lot by the supply and demand imbalance within different markets. So, the way that Hired works is that we place the candidates up on a pedestal, and it works really, really well in cases where it's very hard to hire technical talent. And as we map out sort of regions that we want to go into, there's a lot of data that we can use to help answer some of those decisions. Unfilled jobs, venture funding in the area, so on and so forth. So our expansion plan from now to kind of end of 2018 has us going into 50 cities. Now, there will be a little bit of give and take as to what order we go into them, but it's pretty clear from a supply and demand what the markets look like. Another big factor, of course, is the people on the ground, right? So opportunistically, this wasn't a region that we're ready to go into this year until we met the right person, and now we're here.
Yeah, I mean, it's as boring as that. I mean, it's as boring as, it's what's the business case? How much is it going to cost me to get into this market? What's the market opportunity there? We have the benefit of being a type of offering that people consume it outside of where they live, and so we were able to, like when we opened up in Singapore, we had network points of presence then in Tokyo as well as here in Hong Kong, and so we could see our customer base grow in these, let's call them satellite areas, or these other areas, and that really kind of said, yeah, here's where you need to be next, or here's where you shouldn't invest a whole lot more.
And we kind of talked a bit about best practices and the right thing to do, and maybe if you guys could share some of the wrong things you've done, if there were any major mistakes you made as you entered the Asian market, things you would do differently.
We haven't made any mistakes. I don't
Never? None.
Personally, I drank a couple of things last night that were definitely not good ideas.
I mean, I think a lot of people would say this, but we should have come local sooner.
Yeah.
I mean, you can try and do things from the US and Europe, but you need to be here. You need to be on the ground. You need to be building out the relationships. It's such, e-commerce is such a dynamic space that things change from month to month. So you have to be there on the ground and really, really see what happens.
Culturalization, right?
Culturalize. Yeah, that's our new favorite adjective we learnt backstage. Culturalization.
You know, is some of that kind of being, do you have to let go of the responsibility for the market to the local team? You know, is it a bit easy to be a bit precious about controlling it from afar, and do you have to really delegate to your local guys on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to hiring key people that you trust, and that you can share the corporate DNA, and that'll live around the world. I mean, I would say the same thing too. Yeah, really truly being local, not just having a local office, but really, whether that's translating content, whether that's having support and sales in language. That's one of the things. Those are the things that we wish we had done faster, but you get there eventually.
But that wasn't a mistake.
A learning.
No, it was a learning. It was learningization is what it was. Yeah.
Learningization. And we're almost out of time. So let's say if there's one key piece of advice that you had to give to someone thinking about opening an office in Asia, what would it be?
A little bit of a self-serving one, but if you're looking to hire technical talent, you should definitely check out Hired. I hear they'll be launching in this region soon.
I really liked Allan's point earlier, and I think in any market you should wait for the right people before you open it. The first 2 or 3 people you hire are going to be really key to how well you do in that market.
I can't do better than that. Yeah, I would agree with that 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Guys.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, James.